Emma stepped into the Grand City Bank, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. It was a big day for her. After months of saving, she was finally going to open her first bank account. She had been dreaming of this moment, knowing it was a step toward independence and security. She was wearing her favorite jeans and a plain t-shirt. Her old shoes were a little worn out, but they were comfortable. Emma didn't mind her simple clothes. After all, she wasn't there to impress anyone. But as she walked past the polished marble floors and shiny glass doors, she felt small. The bank was big, expensive-looking, and full of people who looked much more important than her. She couldn't help but feel out of place. But she pushed the thought away. I deserve to be here just like anyone else, she thought, trying to shake the feeling of discomfort. Emma approached the counter where a young woman sat, typing away on a computer. The woman didn't look up when Emma stepped forward. She waited, awkwardly shifting from foot to foot. "Excuse me," Emma said politely, her voice soft. "I'd like to open an account." The woman finally glanced up, her eyes scanning Emma from head to toe in an almost judgmental way. She didn't smile. She didn't greet Emma warmly. Instead, she simply pointed to a chair on the far side of the room. "Sit there," she said dismissively, before turning back to her computer. Emma blinked, taken aback by the coldness. She had expected a friendly greeting, maybe some help with the process. Instead, she felt like an outsider, unwanted in the very place she had come to trust with her money. She walked over to the chair and sat down, glancing around. The other customers in the bank were all well-dressed. Expensive suits, designer bags, shiny shoes. They seemed to look at her with disinterest, perhaps even with mild confusion. Emma tried to ignore the stares and focused on the brochures on the coffee table in front of her. But the longer she sat, the more she could feel the tension in the air. It wasn't just the uncomfortable silence. It was the way the staff looked at her, the way they whispered behind her back when they thought she couldn't hear. The woman behind the counter glanced at Emma again, this time rolling her eyes. She snickered and muttered something to a colleague who was walking by. The two of them laughed, making no attempt to hide their mockery. Emma felt her face turn red, but she forced herself to stay calm. Minutes passed, then hours. Emma checked her phone. It had been more than an hour since she had arrived, and no one had come to speak with her. It was clear that she was being ignored. The staff seemed to be busy helping everyone else, but not her. She saw the same woman at the counter smiling as she helped an older man in a designer suit, offering him a seat with a polite tone. Emma sighed, trying to ignore the uncomfortable feeling in her stomach. But it was hard to forget when the staff kept glancing at her, laughing quietly when they thought she wasn't watching. She was treated as if she didn't belong, as if her presence was an inconvenience. Her patience was wearing thin, but she knew that if she left now, she might never come back. "I have a right to be here," she told herself firmly. "I'm not leaving until I've opened my account." Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a man in a sharp suit approached her. He was tall, with perfectly combed hair and a smug expression on his face. He looked at Emma and raised an eyebrow. "Are you here for an account, miss?" he asked, his voice flat. Emma nodded, standing up. "Yes, I've been waiting for over an hour," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Is there anyone who can help me?" The man glanced over at the counter where the young woman was still busy typing away. He gave a small nod, as if Emma was an afterthought. "She's busy," he said, his tone dismissive. "You'll have to wait a bit longer." Emma's heart sank. She could feel the frustration bubbling up inside her. She had waited patiently, but it was clear that she was being treated differently. She wasn't important to them. She took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "I've been waiting for over an hour. Can you please help me? I have all my documents right here," she said, holding up her folder of papers. The man looked at her briefly, then shook his head. "I don't have time for this," he muttered before walking away. Emma felt her hands tremble with anger. She wanted to shout, to stand up and demand respect, But she knew that wouldn't help. Instead, she sat back down, trying to control her emotions. She couldn't believe how she was being treated. The bank, which should have been a place of trust, had turned into a place of humiliation. Emma was just a young woman trying to start her financial journey, and yet she was being treated like she didn't matter. But as she sat there, something inside her shifted. She wasn't going to let them make her feel small anymore. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. She took out her phone and typed a quick message to her father. "Dad, I need you to come to the bank now." The moment she hit send, Emma felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. Something told her that the staff's laughter, their mocking glances, their rude behavior, it was all about to change. And when her father arrived, the entire bank would realize just how wrong they had been. Emma's fingers gripped her phone tightly as she waited. The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly, each second growing heavier as the mocking whispers from the staff grew louder. Her heart raced. She felt like everyone in the room was watching her, judging her for something she didn't even understand. What had she done wrong? She was just a young woman trying to open a simple bank account. Her mind kept replaying the rude glances, the quiet laughter, the way the staff ignored her as if she didn't belong. Every time the young woman behind the counter looked up and then quickly turned away, it felt like another stab in her chest. Emma was no stranger to being judged based on her appearance, but never had it felt so blatant, so cruel. Finally, her phone buzzed. It was a message from her father. "I'm on my way." The word sent a strange sense of calm through her, but the anger didn't disappear. The injustice of what she was experiencing was too much. She wasn't sure what her father could do, but she knew one thing for sure. He was coming, and when he did, things were going to change. Emma looked around the bank once again, and this time, it felt different. The other customers who had been whispering and glancing at her were no longer just background noise. They were people who would remember this moment, the moment she was humiliated in front of everyone. And Emma wasn't sure whether that thought made her feel worse or made her feel like she had something to prove. A few more minutes passed. She tapped her foot impatiently, waiting for her father's arrival. Then the door to the bank swung open. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she saw her father's imposing figure step through the door. She had always admired the way he carried himself. His tall frame, the confident stride, the sharp suit that made him look like someone important. But today, something about the way he entered felt different. It wasn't just the power he exuded. There was an unspoken promise in the air that something was about to shift. As her father walked into the bank, the atmosphere changed instantly. The whispers stopped. The staff seemed to freeze, their eyes widening in recognition. It didn't take long for them to realize who had just entered. Emma's father was no ordinary man. He wasn't just a customer. He wasn't just anyone. He was the man who owned shares in the bank, a major investor. He had made millions in the business world, and his presence in the building wasn't just a surprise. It was a warning. The manager who had been so quick to dismiss Emma, the woman who had laughed behind her back, and all the other staff members who had treated her like dirt now realized the mistake they had made. Emma's father walked up to the counter, his eyes cold as he glanced at the staff. He didn't need to say a word. His presence alone spoke volumes. The bank manager, who had been standing near the back, rushed forward, trying to appear calm but failing miserably. "Mr. Thompson, welcome," the manager stammered, clearly nervous. "How can I help you today?" Emma's father didn't respond right away. He simply glanced at the young woman who had been ignoring Emma. The woman's face turned pale as she realized what was happening. Her hand trembled slightly as she tried to pretend that nothing was wrong. But Emma could see the fear in her eyes. Her father looked at Emma then, his expression softening just a little. He nodded toward her, a silent acknowledgement that she was the reason he had come. He turned his gaze back to the manager. "I need to speak to you in private," he said in a low, controlled voice. The manager nodded quickly and led him to an office in the back, leaving Emma standing there, watching. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of anger and anticipation building up inside her. She had never seen her father like this before. So calm, so powerful. Emma knew he was doing this for her, but she couldn't help but feel a strange sense of fear. What would happen next? She didn't have to wait long. The door to the back office opened, and her father walked out, his expression still cold but now with a faint trace of satisfaction. The manager followed behind him, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Emma's father looked at the staff one last time. "You will treat my daughter with respect. Every customer who walks through that door is important. Whether they're wearing a suit or jeans, they deserve to be treated equally." His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it that made everyone in the room shiver. The bank manager nodded quickly, too afraid to say anything. The other staff members stood frozen, their eyes downcast. They had been caught, and they knew it. Emma's father turned to her then, his eyes softening as he approached. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. Emma nodded, though she still felt a bit numb. The humiliation she had endured in front of everyone was hard to shake off, but having her father here made her feel a little stronger. She wasn't alone. But her father wasn't finished. "I'll be pulling out my investments from this bank, unless you get rid of the staff member who treated my daughter like dirt," he said to the manager, his voice still calm but full of authority. The manager's eyes widened. He didn't know how to respond, but Emma could see the fear in his eyes. He knew that without her father's investments, the bank would lose a huge amount of money. After a long pause, the manager nodded. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. We'll take care of it immediately." Emma's father gave a small nod, then turned to her. "Let's go, Emma. I think we've seen enough." As they walked out of the bank together, Emma felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. She wasn't sure whether she should feel proud of what her father had done or embarrassed by the way the bank had treated her in the first place. But one thing was certain: things were going to change now. And Emma knew that she would never again let anyone make her feel small. The moment Emma and her father stepped outside the bank, the tension in the air was almost palpable. It wasn't just the way the bank staff had treated her that day. It was the realization that things were about to change. Not only for her, but for everyone who had witnessed the humiliation she had endured. Emma felt a strange sense of empowerment, mixed with uncertainty. She knew that her father had just made the staff squirm, but part of her didn't want them to suffer. She just wanted to move on, to prove that she could stand on her own 2 feet, without anyone's help. But her father was different. He had always been protective, and seeing the way he had taken control in that moment made her realize just how much he cared for her. They got into his sleek, black car, and Emma glanced out of the window as they drove away from the bank. It had been a day full of surprises. Her father had always kept his personal business private, but she never realized just how influential he truly was. The way the bank manager had practically bowed to him, the fear in the eyes of the staff. It was all so overwhelming. Emma couldn't help but feel a mixture of pride and discomfort. Her father turned to her as the car rolled through the busy streets, the hum of the engine filling the silence between them. "You did well today, Emma," he said, his voice steady. "I know it was hard for you, but I'm proud of how you handled everything." Emma smiled faintly, but there was a hint of doubt in her eyes. "I don't know, Dad. I don't want people to think I'm just getting special treatment because of you. I can handle things on my own." Her father glanced at her, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Emma, you are strong. You've always been strong. But sometimes we need to stand up for what's right, even if it's uncomfortable. And what happened today was wrong. No one should ever treat you like that, no matter who you are or what you're wearing." Emma nodded slowly, feeling her father's words sink in. She had always known that she didn't need to prove her worth to anyone, but today had opened her eyes to how easy it was for people to assume things about others. She had been judged for something as simple as her clothes, and it had cost her a moment of dignity. But her father was right. She had handled herself with grace, even when they had tried to make her feel small. She wasn't going to let that moment define her. As the car turned onto a quiet side street, Emma noticed a black car parked ahead. It was sleek, shiny, and stood out against the dull gray of the other cars. She felt an uneasy twinge in her chest as her father slowed the car to a stop in front of the building where the mysterious car was parked. "Where are we going, Dad?" Emma asked, her curiosity piqued. Her father didn't answer immediately. Instead, he checked his watch and looked around, as if waiting for something. Emma leaned forward, trying to see if anyone was inside the car, but the windows were tinted, and she couldn't make out a thing. As they sat there, the door of the black car opened, and a tall man in a sharp suit stepped out. He looked familiar, but Emma couldn't place him. His cold, calculating eyes met hers for a split second before he turned to her father, who had stepped out of the car to greet him. "Mr. Thompson," the man said with a slight nod, his voice smooth. "It's good to see you again." Emma's father shook the man's hand firmly. "Likewise, Mr. Graves," he replied, his voice calm but with an underlying intensity. "Let's talk." Emma's heart skipped a beat. There was something about the way the man, Mr. Graves, carried himself that made her uneasy. He wasn't like the people she had met at the bank, who had looked down on her. This man was different. He was dangerous in a quiet, controlled way. As the two men walked toward a nearby building, Emma felt a chill crawl down her spine. She wasn't sure why, but something about the situation didn't sit right with her. Her father had always been protective, but this felt like more than just a routine meeting. She decided to follow them, keeping a safe distance as they entered the building. It was a small, inconspicuous place on the edge of the city, nothing like the high-rise office buildings Emma was used to. The door clicked shut behind them, and Emma stood outside, her curiosity getting the better of her. The minutes stretched on as she paced back and forth. What was going on inside that building? And why had her father brought her here? Then, after what felt like an eternity, the door opened again. Her father stepped out, looking calm, but Emma could see the slight tension in his shoulders. Mr. Graves followed closely behind, his expression unreadable. As they approached the car, Mr. Graves turned to Emma's father. "I'll have the papers ready for you by next week," he said in a low voice. "We'll move forward with the deal, but you know how delicate these things are. Let's make sure we stay on the same page." Her father nodded, but his jaw was clenched tight. "I understand, Mr. Graves. But remember, I'm in control here. Don't forget who you're dealing with." Mr. Graves gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Of course, Mr. Thompson. I'll make sure everything goes smoothly." As they drove away from the building, Emma glanced at her father, sensing the heaviness in the air. She could tell something big was happening behind the scenes, something that involved Mr. Graves and perhaps more than just business. Her father had always been a man of few words, but his actions spoke volumes. He wasn't just some wealthy businessman. He had connections, power, and influence that went far beyond what Emma had ever imagined. "Dad," Emma asked cautiously, "what was that about? What's going on?" Her father didn't answer immediately. He simply glanced at her, his eyes softening. "You'll understand one day, Emma. Just know that I'm doing everything I can to protect you. There are people in this world who will try to take advantage of you, but as long as I'm here, you'll be safe." Emma's chest tightened at his words. She had never realized how much her father had been protecting her, not just physically, but in ways she couldn't even understand. But for the first time, she felt the weight of his world pressing down on her, and she wasn't sure if she was ready for it. The days that followed Emma's visit to the bank felt surreal. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the way the staff had treated her, the way they had mocked her, laughed behind her back, and ignored her presence. The humiliation she had endured still lingered, even though her father had made sure the bank knew they had made a huge mistake. But the strange encounter with Mr. Graves left her with an unsettling feeling, something she couldn't quite shake. Her father had always been a man of power, but the meeting with Graves seemed to be something more than just business. There was a dark undertone to their conversation, something Emma couldn't understand. She tried to push the thoughts aside, focusing on other things, but it was impossible. Every time her father spoke about business, every time he mentioned deals or negotiations, Emma couldn't help but feel that there was something more going on than what he was telling her. A week later, Emma's curiosity finally got the better of her. One evening, when her father was working late, she decided to take a look at some of the papers on his desk. She had never done anything like this before, but something told her that she needed to understand what was happening. The truth was out there, and it was time she found it. She carefully approached his desk, trying not to make any noise. His office was filled with leather-bound books, polished wood furniture, and piles of paperwork. Everything was meticulously organized, as her father had always been a perfectionist. Emma scanned the papers until something caught her eye. A folder with the name Graves Industries stamped on it. Her heart skipped a beat. She had heard her father mention that name before, but she had never really understood what it meant. The folder was thick, packed with documents that seemed to have a lot of importance. She hesitated for a moment, wondering if she should stop. But she knew this was her chance. Taking a deep breath, she carefully opened the folder. Inside, there were papers detailing business deals, contracts, and agreements. She scanned the first few pages, trying to make sense of it all. But it wasn't until she reached the final document that her stomach dropped. The document was a memorandum, dated just a few weeks ago. It outlined a large-scale project between her father and Graves Industries, a deal worth millions of dollars. But what stood out to Emma wasn't the size of the deal. It was the terms of the agreement. Graves Industries wasn't just involved in business. They were connected to something much darker. The memorandum outlined plans to acquire land in a developing area. But Emma quickly realized that it wasn't about real estate. It was about manipulating the local government to force people out of their homes. The project was a massive real estate development, and it was going to displace hundreds of families. Emma's hands trembled as she read further. The plan was to demolish entire neighborhoods, pushing out the poor and working-class families who lived there. And Graves Industries was at the center of it all, with her father playing a key role in making it happen. Her mind raced as she processed the information. How could he be involved in something like this? She thought. My father, the man who taught me to care about people, to help others. How could he be part of a plan that would destroy lives? A cold wave of realization washed over her. This wasn't just business. This was something far more sinister. Her father, the man she had always looked up to, the man who had always been her protector, was involved in something that could ruin countless lives. Suddenly, she heard footsteps coming down the hallway. Emma quickly closed the folder and put it back on the desk, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to leave before her father found out she had been snooping around. She quickly exited the office and went to her room, her mind spinning. She couldn't understand what she had just read. The man she had always trusted had been hiding something from her. She wasn't sure what to think anymore. Her father had always talked about doing the right thing, about making the world a better place. But the man in those documents didn't look like the father she knew. He was a part of a machine that exploited the vulnerable, that cared more about money than people. Emma felt lost, her entire world shaken. She didn't know who to trust anymore. That night, as she lay in bed, Emma couldn't stop thinking about what she had learned. Her father was a successful businessman, but what if his success had come at the expense of others? What if all of the wealth, all the power, had been built on the backs of the people he was willing to hurt? She couldn't just sit back and do nothing. But she also couldn't confront her father without knowing the full truth. She needed to dig deeper, to find out more about Graves Industries and her father's involvement. But she had to be careful. If her father found out she was investigating him, she didn't know what might happen. The next morning, she decided to go back to the bank. This time, she wasn't just going to sit there and wait. She needed answers. She needed to know if what she had read in those papers was true. Was her father really involved in the destruction of entire communities? Was Graves Industries really as dangerous as it seemed? As Emma walked through the bank's doors again, she felt a sense of determination wash over her. She wasn't the same person who had walked in there a week ago, humiliated and ignored. She was stronger now, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not her father, not Graves, not anyone, stand in the way of what was right. She made her way to the front desk, where a different staff member was working today. She had no idea who this person was, but she wasn't going to let that stop her. "I need to speak to the manager," Emma said, her voice firm. The staff member looked at her with a raised eyebrow, but Emma didn't back down. "Please," she added, "it's important." After a few tense moments, the staff member nodded and picked up the phone. Emma's heart raced as she waited. She knew this wasn't going to be easy, but she was ready to get the answers she needed. She wasn't going to let her father's secrets destroy everything she had believed in. The truth had to come out. Emma sat in the cold, sterile bank lobby, her fingers nervously tapping on the armrest. Her heart was racing. She had never imagined that the day would come when she'd be sitting in a bank, demanding answers from the very people who had humiliated her just a week ago. But today wasn't just about that. Today was about finding out the truth about her father, the truth about Graves Industries, and the truth about the dark world she was slowly starting to understand. The staff member who had taken her request for the manager had left her waiting for what felt like an eternity. She could hear the quiet murmur of voices in the background, the sound of phones ringing, and the occasional shuffle of papers, but nothing seemed to distract her from the nervous energy building inside her. She couldn't shake the image of the papers she had found in her father's office, the ones detailing the shady dealings with Graves Industries, the plans to displace entire communities, to take homes from people who could barely afford them, to push them aside for a development that would make the rich even richer. It made her sick to think about it, and she couldn't let it go. Finally, after what felt like hours, the manager arrived. His face was flushed, a tight smile on his lips, as though he were trying to hide something. But Emma wasn't fooled. "You wanted to speak with me?" he asked, his tone cold, professional. Emma stood up, straightening her shoulders, trying to keep the fear from showing on her face. This was it. She wasn't going to back down now. "I need to know everything you know about Graves Industries," she said, her voice steady, but filled with a quiet intensity. The manager blinked in surprise, then quickly glanced around, his gaze flickering nervously. He lowered his voice, leaning in closer as though worried someone might overhear. "Miss Thompson, I don't think you fully understand the situation," he said, his words measured and cautious. "Graves Industries is, well, they're not just any business. They have power, connections, and influence that go far beyond what you see on paper." Emma's heart skipped a beat. So it wasn't just business. It was something darker, something more dangerous. "I don't care about their power," Emma said, her voice growing firmer. "I care about the truth. I want to know what's really going on, and why my father is involved in their plans. Why did he make a deal with them?" The manager glanced around again, his face tight with anxiety. For a moment, Emma thought he might refuse to answer. But then he spoke in a hushed tone, barely audible. "Mr. Thompson's involvement with Graves Industries goes way back, long before you were born. Graves, he's not just a businessman. He's more like a shadow," the manager whispered. "And your father, well, he's been working with them for years, making sure their projects go through, no matter the cost." Emma felt her chest tighten. Her father wasn't just working with them. He was complicit in their plans. "What kind of projects?" she asked, trying to keep her voice from shaking. The manager hesitated, clearly torn between his loyalty to her father and the fear of what might happen if he kept silent. Finally, he let out a deep sigh. "It's not just the land development, Miss Thompson. Graves Industries isn't interested in just real estate. They've been involved in everything from money laundering to political manipulation, even illegal investments. Your father has been part of all of it, either directly or indirectly. The projects you've seen, the ones that involve displacing entire communities, They're only the tip of the iceberg. Emma felt as if the ground beneath her was crumbling. Her father wasn't just a businessman. He was part of something far darker than she had ever imagined. She had always admired him, trusted him, but now the reality was sinking in. She had to confront him. She had to know the truth. "Why did you never say anything about this?" Emma demanded, her voice low but filled with disbelief. The manager shrugged, his face weary. "What good would it have done to tell you? Graves Industries runs this town. They own the politicians, they control the media, and they have people everywhere. Your father is just one piece of the puzzle. No one dares to go against them. You think you can change things. I admire your courage, but it's not that simple." Emma's heart pounded in her chest as she processed what the manager had just revealed. She wasn't just up against her father anymore. She was up against a powerful network of corruption, manipulation, and greed. And the more she thought about it, the angrier she became. This wasn't just about a few bad business decisions. This was about the destruction of entire lives. "I need to talk to my father," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The manager looked at her, his face softening with sympathy. "I'm afraid that may not be possible, Miss Thompson. Mr. Thompson isn't just any man. He's the one who controls most of the investments in this town. He makes the rules, and anyone who goes against him will regret it. You can't win this fight alone." Emma felt a rush of emotions flood through her. Anger, betrayal, fear, but also something else, determination. "I won't back down," she said, her voice more resolute than before. "I won't let this go. I will find a way to stop them, even if I have to do it on my own." The manager seemed to study her for a long moment, as though weighing the situation. Finally, he spoke. "You're right about one thing," he said slowly. "You can't do this alone. But there are others. People who know the truth. People who want to take down Graves Industries and everything they represent. If you're serious about this, you'll need to find them. And you'll need to be prepared for what's coming." Graves doesn't take kindly to threats. Emma swallowed hard, but she didn't flinch. "I don't care. I'll find a way to stop them. And I'll make sure my father sees the truth." The manager gave her a small nod, as if acknowledging the courage she had found within herself. "Then you better be careful, Miss Thompson. This battle is just beginning." Emma left the bank feeling a mix of dread and determination. She now knew that the fight she was facing wasn't just about her father. It was about something much bigger. And she was ready to face it head-on, no matter the cost. She had to stop the destruction, stop the lies, and make sure the truth was revealed, even if it meant losing everything she had ever known. Emma had no illusions left. The truth she had uncovered about her father, the depths of his involvement with Graves Industries, was enough to shatter everything she had once believed. But it wasn't enough to just know the truth. She had to act. She couldn't allow the corruption and destruction to continue. After leaving the bank, Emma spent days researching everything she could find about Graves Industries. Every corner of the internet was filled with whispers of their illegal dealings and political manipulations. She found articles, court records, and news stories that painted a picture of a ruthless empire built on lies, deception, and the exploitation of vulnerable people. The more she dug, the more she realized just how deep the corruption went. But Emma didn't want to just be a bystander, helplessly watching as everything crumbled around her. She needed help. She needed allies. Late one night, she sat in her room, staring at the computer screen. The weight of everything that had happened was pressing down on her chest, but she knew there was no turning back now. She had come too far. The question now was, who could she trust? She thought about the manager at the bank. He had been the first person to confirm the truth, to tell her the things she hadn't wanted to hear. But could she trust him further? He had warned her about how dangerous Graves was, about how they controlled everything. But was he just trying to scare her off? Or did he genuinely want to help? As if on cue, Emma's phone buzzed. A new message. She opened it quickly. "Miss Thompson, I know you're serious about this. I found someone who can help you. They'd been fighting Graves for years. I've arranged for you to meet them tomorrow. Be careful. Trust no one. It was the bank manager. Emma quickly responded, her fingers trembling. Thank you. Where should I meet them? Within seconds, the reply came through. Meet me at the old library on Elm Street at 3 p.m. They'll be waiting for you there. Emma stared at the message, feeling a mix of relief and trepidation. She had no idea what she was walking into, but she knew it was her only chance. She had to follow through. The next day, Emma dressed carefully. She knew she couldn't be too obvious. She had to be discreet. She couldn't let anyone know what she was planning, especially her father. He'd been watching her closely ever since the incident at the bank, and Emma had to be smart about this. At exactly 3 p.m., Emma arrived at the old library. The building was worn and tired, its windows grimy with age. The scent of old books filled the air, but there was something else, something darker. She felt it in her bones. She walked in, her eyes scanning the room. The library was nearly empty, save for a few quiet figures browsing the shelves. Emma's pulse quickened as she spotted the man sitting near the back. He was older, his face weathered, but his eyes were sharp, alert. He had the look of someone who had seen too much in his life. Emma approached him cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know if she could trust him, but at this point, she had no choice. You must be Emma, the man said in a low, gravelly voice. I'm Alex. I've been expecting you. Emma nodded, swallowing her nerves. I don't know who else to turn to, she said, her voice shaky. I need help. I need to stop Graves Industries. And my father. Alex studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. You've made the right choice. But be warned, this is no small fight. You're up against a giant. They'll do anything to protect their secrets, and they'll stop at nothing to crush anyone who stands in their way. I'm ready, Emma said, her voice firmer now. I won't back down. I need to know what I'm up against. Alex leaned in closer, lowering his voice even further. Graves Industries is more than just a company. They've infiltrated every part of the system. The government, the media, the banks. They have people in high places. It's not just about real estate deals and land acquisitions. Graves and his associates have their hands in everything, from money laundering to human trafficking, from political manipulation to organized crime. They've built an empire, and they've done it by destroying lives. Emma felt the weight of his words hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't just about her father making a bad business deal. This was about the suffering of hundreds, if not thousands, of innocent people. People whose lives had been torn apart by the actions of Graves and his empire. Your father isn't just a part of this, Alex continued. He's been one of the key players. He helped build this empire, and now he's too deep to get out. But that doesn't mean you're powerless. We have allies. People who are willing to take down Graves and his network. It's going to be dangerous, but if you're in, we'll make sure you have the resources you need. Emma nodded, determination settling into her bones. I'm in, she said. I won't let them get away with it. I'll take them down, no matter what it takes. Alex looked at her with a mix of admiration and concern. Good, but remember, this is a long game. You'll need to gather information, make connections, and stay under the radar. Graves doesn't forgive easily. If you make one wrong move, it could cost you everything. Emma swallowed hard, the reality of what she was about to undertake settling in. She had always known that she would have to fight for what was right, but she hadn't known how much she would have to lose in the process. I'll do whatever it takes, she said, her voice steady now. Over the next few weeks, Emma met with Alex and his allies in secret. They worked together, gathering evidence, exposing Graves' illegal dealings, and slowly chipping away at the empire he had built. But as they dug deeper, the danger grew. Emma began to feel the weight of the risk she was taking. Every phone call, every meeting, every email was a potential trap. Graves had spies everywhere, And Emma knew that the closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous things would become. But there was no turning back now. She had chosen her path, and there was only one way forward. She had to expose her father for what he was, and take down Graves Industries once and for all. The days had blurred together for Emma. The investigation was moving faster than she expected, and the closer she got to the truth, the more dangerous the game became. Every moment felt like a countdown, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. It was as if Graves Industries had eyes everywhere, and no matter how hard she tried to cover her tracks, someone was always a step ahead of her. But now she had no choice. It was time to confront the man who had been the architect of all this corruption, her father. It had been a long time coming. She had always looked up to him, admired him for his success and the life he had built. But the truth was undeniable now. He wasn't the man she thought he was. He was a pawn in a game far larger and more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. And if she didn't act now, it would be too late. The meeting was set for late in the evening, at the mansion that Emma had once called home. The grand estate sat on a hill, its towering gates and perfectly manicured lawns a far cry from the broken communities Graves Industries had destroyed. Emma had spent so much time here growing up, but now it felt foreign to her, like stepping into the den of the very thing she was trying to destroy. As Emma walked up the path to the front door, her heart pounded in her chest. She knew this conversation would change everything. She didn't know if her father would admit to what he had done, or if he would try to lie his way out of it. But she had no illusions. She knew what needed to be done. The door swung open before she even had a chance to ring the bell. Her father stood there, his face tense, his eyes narrowing when he saw her. "Emma," he said, his voice cold. "What are you doing here?" Emma stood tall, refusing to let her emotions show. "We need to talk," she said firmly. "About Graves Industries. About what you've been doing." Her father's face twitched, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw a flicker of guilt. But it was gone just as quickly as it had appeared. "You don't understand, Emma," he said, stepping back to let her in. "You've always been too idealistic. This is how the world works. You can't change it." "I don't care how the world works," Emma replied, her voice steady but filled with anger. "I care about what's right. And what you've been doing isn't right. I know about the land deals, the money laundering, the political manipulation. I know everything." Her father's expression hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about," he growled. "I did what I had to do to protect our family, to protect this company. This is bigger than you or me." "Bigger?" Emma echoed, shaking her head. "You're destroying people's lives, Dad. For money, for power, for nothing. You've sold your soul." He turned away from her, pacing across the room, his hands clenched at his sides. "You think I'd wanted this? You think I'd wanted to be part of this? I didn't have a choice. I was trapped, just like everyone else. I did what I had to do to survive." "Survive?" Emma asked, her voice cracking. "You've ruined lives to survive. You've ruined your own family. Don't you see that?" Her father's shoulders slumped, and for the first time, Emma saw the weariness in his face. "I never wanted this for you, Emma," he said softly, his voice breaking. "I wanted you to have a better life. I wanted you to be happy. But the world doesn't care about happiness. It's about survival. And I did what I had to do to make sure you were protected." Emma's heart wrenched in her chest. She had always wanted to believe that her father was a good man, that he had done everything out of love for her. But now she saw the truth. He hadn't done it for her. He had done it for himself. "I don't need your protection," Emma said, stepping forward. "What I need is for you to stop. For you to make things right. You have the power to stop Graves. You have the power to fix what's broken. But you're choosing not to. You're choosing to keep going." Her father didn't say anything for a long moment. He stood there, staring at the floor, his hands trembling. The weight of his choices was finally sinking in. "Emma, I'm sorry," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought if I could make enough money, I could give you everything you ever wanted. I didn't know how far I'd gone, how deep I was in. But now it's too late. They won't let me go." "Who won't let you go?" Emma asked urgently. "Graves, you can still get out. You can still make things right." Her father shook his head slowly, his face drawn with regret. "You don't understand, Emma. It's not just Graves. It's everyone. They have people everywhere. They've got their claws in the government, in the banks, in the media. If I tried to back out now, they'd destroy me, destroy everything I've worked for." Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing. She knew her father was right. Graves Industries was powerful, but she couldn't let that stop her. She had come too far. "You don't have to do this anymore," Emma said, her voice shaking with emotion. "We can fight them. We can expose everything. We can make them pay for what they've done." Her father looked at her, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I don't know how to stop this, Emma. I don't know if I can." Emma stepped closer, taking her father's hands in hers. "We'll figure it out together. I'll help you. But we have to act now. If we don't, we'll lose everything." For a long moment, her father didn't say anything. But then, slowly, he nodded. "You're right," he said quietly. "We'll have to fight. Together." It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be without danger. But Emma knew, for the first time in a long time, that she wasn't alone. Together, they would take on Graves Industries and expose everything. They would take back what had been stolen. The fight was far from over. But Emma had finally found the strength to face it. And this time, she wouldn't back down. Emma felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. The battle she had been preparing for had finally arrived. She and her father had made their decision. They were going to take down Graves Industries, no matter what the cost. But as the days passed, Emma couldn't shake the growing fear that this would come at a price much higher than they were ready to pay. The first step was to gather all the evidence they could against Graves and his associates. Emma, with the help of Alex and the small group of allies she had gathered over the past weeks, worked tirelessly. They compiled documents, emails, financial records, and recordings, anything that would prove the depths of Graves' illegal activities. But it wasn't enough to just have the evidence. Emma knew that they had to get it to the right people. They needed a plan, and they needed to act fast. Every move they made was dangerous. Graves' men were everywhere, and if they even suspected what was happening, they would stop at nothing to silence them. It was the night before they were going to release the information to the press, the night before everything would change. Emma sat in her father's study, staring out at the vast estate before her. She had spent so many years here, feeling safe, feeling like nothing could touch her. But now, it felt like everything was crumbling around her. Her father was in the living room, pacing nervously. He hadn't been the same since they made their decision to go public. The fear was evident on his face, but there was something else, something that made Emma worry. "Dad?" she called out softly. He turned toward her, and for a moment, their eyes locked. "I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched," he said, his voice tight with anxiety. "They know, Emma. They know we're coming for them." Emma didn't want to admit it, but she couldn't ignore the growing sense of dread that had settled in her chest. She had the same feeling, the feeling that every step they took was being followed, every conversation overheard. "They won't stop," her father continued. "Graves won't let this go. If we expose him, if we show the world what he's been doing, it's not just the end of his empire, it's the end of us too." "We don't have a choice," Emma replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "We've come this far. We can't back down now." But as she said the words, she felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Was she right? Was there really no turning back? Later that night, as Emma lay in bed, she heard a sound, a faint creak from downstairs. She held her breath, listening. It came again, this time louder. Someone was in the house. Her heart raced, and she quickly got out of bed, moving silently toward the door. She crept down the stairs, her mind racing with possibilities. Had they been found? Was Graves sending someone to stop them? She reached the bottom of the stairs and froze. In the shadows, she saw two figures moving toward her father's office. She could barely make them out, but she knew one thing for sure. They weren't supposed to be here. Emma's hand went to her phone. She needed to call Alex. She needed help. Fast. But as she reached for her phone, the lights flickered and went out. The house was plunged into darkness. The panic rose in her chest. Whoever was here, they were going to make sure Emma and her father didn't get away with this. She had to warn her father. She had to protect him. She hurried toward the office. But before she could get there, the door opened. Her father stood in the doorway, his face pale, his eyes wide with fear. "They're here," he whispered. "It's too late." Before Emma could respond, the figures moved out of the shadows. Two men, tall, dressed in black, their faces obscured by masks. Emma's breath caught in her throat as they advanced toward her. "I'm sorry, Emma," one of the men said in a low voice, "but this is where it ends." Emma's heart raced, her mind scrambling for a plan. She wasn't ready to die. She wasn't ready to give up. Suddenly, the front door slammed open. Emma's eyes shot to the entrance. A figure stood there, silhouetted against the moonlight. It was Alex. "Get away from her," Alex shouted, charging into the room. The men paused, clearly startled by his sudden appearance. For a brief moment, there was a standoff, a tense silence. But Emma knew they couldn't just stand there. They had to fight back, or they would lose everything. The men moved quickly, grabbing Emma's father and pulling him toward the door. Emma screamed, but Alex was already moving, taking on one of the men with swift, practiced moves. The other man swung at Emma's father, trying to drag him out of the house, but Alex's voice rang out. "Move. Now." Emma didn't hesitate. She grabbed her father's arm, pulling him toward the back exit. The door burst open as they rushed outside into the cold night air. Emma's heart was pounding as she sprinted alongside her father and Alex, who was covering their retreat. They made it to the car, and without a moment's hesitation, Alex started the engine. Emma and her father got in quickly, but as they pulled away, she turned back to look at the mansion, the house she had once called home. The place that was supposed to be safe. It was now a symbol of everything they had lost. As the car sped away into the night, Emma's thoughts raced. They weren't safe yet. They had made it out, but Graves Industries had deep roots. They would stop at nothing to silence them. But Emma knew one thing for sure. They had started something. No matter the cost, no matter the danger, they had to see this through. They had to expose the truth. Her father looked at her, his face full of fear and regret. "I'm sorry, Emma. I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Emma didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a deep breath and looked out the window. "I know," she said softly, "but it's not too late to make things right. We'll take them down. Together." And with that, Emma knew that this fight wasn't just about justice. It was about redemption. And no matter how much it cost, they would see it through.